Si os parece, si no hay ninguna pregunta ahora inmediata, lo que podemos hacer es ir ya directamente al momento. Ah, perdón, sí.
Noeli, I will be happy to see again just the map of Lake Chad, to understand a little bit the origin of your interest in this question of ecology. Thank you. It's just a frame of Lake Chad at the beginning. Okay.
Non, c'est après. Je voulais vous montrer. Ici, là. Ça, c'est le Tchad. One path for Cameroon, another path for Nigeria. Ah, j'ai du mal avec l'autre. Voilà. And Niger. Donc, en fait, le lac, c'est parce qu'on dit le lac Tchad, mais parce que le lac occupe une grande partie du territoire tchadien, mais le lac est partagé entre plusieurs pays. Donc, quand on voit l'évolution, par exemple, la partie nigérienne, la partie nigériane a complètement disparu. Il reste une toute petite partie pour le Cameroun et voilà le Tchad. Mais ça, c'est la photographie, comme vous le voyez, s'arrête en 2007. Donc aujourd'hui, ce n'est plus d'actualité. Ça reste vraiment un tout petit point d'eau sur le territoire tchadien. Mais avant, en tout cas, les paléontologues parlaient d'une mer intérieure qui couvrait jusqu'au Sahara. Et au fur et à mesure, la mer s'est rétrécie, devenu ce lac qui est en train de disparaître complètement.
So if translation is needed, the point is to see that the lake was big and covering different countries. Nowadays, and the last map is of 2007, so it's no more the actual data, it's even smaller. But today it's only in Chad and a little bit in Cameroon. It has disappeared from Nigeria, Niger, and so that's the state of the art at the moment and the disappearance of Lake Chad.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just have a little question, whether you may explore a little bit about on the seventh gate. Perhaps you can add a little bit about that.
Est-ce que tu vas explorer un peu cette idée d'une septième porte?
Oui, effectivement, cette septième porte dans ma recherche est vraiment très importante parce que la prise de conscience écologique souvent mène les personnes dans une situation de dépression. On parle souvent d'éco-anxiété. Et assez souvent, nous disons que la réponse à l'éco-anxiété, c'est l'agir. Mais comment agir quand on est en dépression? Et les récits que moi j'utilise montrent que l'éco-anxiété est un indicateur, est un signal, mais qui amène les gens à une quête de sens au sens large, mais la plupart du temps, c'est vraiment une quête spirituelle. Et c'est lorsque les gens font vraiment une expérience spirituelle, et le plus souvent, c'est une expérience d'être aimé, d'être pardonné, d'être délivré de la culpabilité, de leur implication dans la crise écologique, que les ressources pour l'action se libèrent. Donc, pour le résumer, oui, il y a la prise de conscience, mais l'expérience spirituelle est fondamentale pour fonder l'action écologique. Sans cette expérience spirituelle, l'action écologique ne peut pas perdurer. Et il y a eu la création d'un mouvement à Paris, en tout cas c'est en France, contemplation et action, et lutte et contemplation, justement parce que les acteurs écologiques s'épuisent assez rapidement parce que la question est dramatique. Donc, tant qu'il n'y a pas une profonde expérience spirituelle, les personnes auront du mal à durer dans cette action écologique.
Let me try to translate. That's about this seventh gate and the indispensability of this spiritual part. In the narratives that Noélie is collecting, very often realizing the ecological crisis put people in depression. So let's call it eco-anxiety. And people will say, if you want to go out of eco-anxiety, you need action. You need action with others. Then Noélie says, how do people will go into action if they are in depression? And in the narratives she has collected, the spiritual part, the experience of being loved, of being forgiven, is often what allows to switch from depression to action. There is a deep spiritual experience that makes the switch from depression to action. You can't go from depression to action quickly by itself. And a good example of this need of spiritual experience is a young movement in France launched by Catholics and climate activists called Fight and Contemplation. It's a title of a book by Brother Roger from the Taizé community in the 70s. So that's the need for spiritual experience.
Bueno, pues entonces llegamos ya al punto final de esta mañana, que es esta mesa redonda con los dos ponentes, ¿no? Y entonces podemos dirigir las preguntas que creamos necesarias y necesitemos.
Es una pregunta para Xavier de alguien que ha estado siguiéndolo online y dice lo siguiente, leo el correo. Ante la velocidad acelerada de los límites sobrepasados y ante el aumento de los refugiados y personas descartadas por el sistema, cabe esperar que necesitemos una gran ampliación de la tienda, un hospital de campaña de la Iglesia. La pregunta es, Orientar la conversión ecológica a la transformación de las personas, de líderes de empresas y gobiernos como estrategia central podría resultar excesivamente lenta y no compartiría demasiado sufrimiento. Hay otras corrientes científicas que ponen en valor la ecología de los pobres, que entiende que la coordinación de la lucha de los pueblos que resisten al extractivismo en los territorios de sacrificio, como la de los pobres que se encuentran en las periferias de territorios de exclusión, pueden acelerar el cambio ecosocial. Orientar la conversión ecológica hacia el compromiso de estos ámbitos, como fue antaño la teología de la liberación, ¿no podría resultar más efectiva que provocar los cambios en el sistema de gobernanza global desde el dolor de los pobres?
I don't think I have the answer, or if I have an answer, that we will need both. We need, and that's the call in Laudate Deum by Pope Francis to what he calls a multilateralism from the ground. And so certainly union between different movements, popular movements, social movement, ecological movement is needed. And we have some places where things are interconnected like this. And I think the church, the Catholic Church, as an international body, as a universal body, can be a place for connecting this initiative led by popular movement, native movements. We have some people in the room coming from the from the network in the Amazonian region. And in a way, we are experiencing this multilateralism from the ground in this room in the coming days. So let's be thankful for that. But let's be clear, this will not be enough if we don't connect this voice of the voiceless, as Noélie was saying, if we don't connect these voices to the people who have power. And that's exactly what Pope Francis is doing in Laudate Deum, is bringing the voice of voiceless people to the powerful people, asking them two direct questions, saying, well, how is your power useful if you don't act now? And when we see that the world is being destroyed, and interpelling the powerful people, saying, in a way, is repeating the gospel. Why is it useful to win the world if you lose your soul? And so we can't only hope that connecting local or even international popular movement will do the job. We will need at one point to make bridges and to make negotiations with the one who have power. If not, we will not change anything. And let's be clear, negotiation can imply fights and contemplation. It's not only that we will be nice and bring nice voicing saying, we'd like you to change. That there may be fight, there may be demonstration, there may be civil disobedience, but at one point we will have to connect with the people who have power. If not, we will fail. And once again, the Catholic Church, churches in general, but the Catholic Church can be a good place for such dialogue, negotiation, because we have in the Catholic Church people with real strong power. If I take one example, the president of the United States at the moment is a Catholic. So, I mean, we have people with big power inside the church. Can we be a place, can we be a community where this dialogue can happen? I hope so. And the Pope in Laudate Deum calling from a multilateralism from the ground, and at the same time speaking to the powerful people in Dubai at the COP28 is making the link. So that may be an example for us.
Hi, I have a terminological question because I'm a little dynamic and spirituality. I thought that you were talking as if dynamics was equal to spirituality. And now I'm a little bit confused with dynamic as a seventh door. Is that the same? Is not the same?
Good question. Well, from the point of view of the research team of Campus de la Transition, the dynamic door is the spiritual one, and so all this has been presented in a book called Manual of the Great Transition. You have access to a free summary of 70 pages of this manual on the web page of the Laudato Si Research Institute in Oxford, led by the Jesuits. So they have translated free of charge a big summary of the manual that is for now only available in French. So in the French context, there's quite strong separation between faith and the university. The dynamic door was a kind of openness to spiritual question, and they speak about religion in this chapter, in this gate. Now, what Noélie is suggesting is part of the conversation between the Campus de la Transition team and particularly some professors of Centre Sèvres, saying, is this sixth gate dynamic, is it strong enough? Is it épais, thick enough to be called spirituality? And maybe not. But that may be the place of conversation with our lay world that would say, well, this is largely enough. And I'm afraid of religions and I'm afraid of institutions. So I want to be free in my spirituality, and with the danger of being a bit vague and rootless. And religions and spirituality movements that will say, well, maybe guys, your sixth door, your dynamic is too thin. You need a thicker approach. And so you need a seventh door that clearly tries to name things. So that may be a difference and a point of dialogue between us as believers and a lay approach, a large approach like the one of the campus.
En fait, pour moi, je me demande, même pour le cas de la France, avec la question de la laïcité, je me demande si la spiritualité n'est pas aussi le nœud de la question écologique. Parce que effectivement, ce n'est pas que la spiritualité soit absente de 6 portes. Et justement, elle est bien présente dans la 6e porte de dynamique. Mais je me demande s'il n'y a pas quelque chose aujourd'hui dans la société où nous avons tellement peur de la spiritualité alors que la question écologique vient reposer cette question. Et est-ce que ce n'est pas finalement aussi une question politique, la question de la spiritualité? Est-ce qu'en voulant écarter la spiritualité, on n'est pas en train aussi de faire taire des voix et faire surgir des choses dont on n'a pas besoin? Et est-ce que finalement pour la France, il n'y a pas à repenser cette laïcité?
So the point is to say, and it may be very linked to the French context, that in our strong laïcité context, in a way we are afraid of spirituality. And so the point of letting it slightly named in the dynamic gate and to say this is enough. Noélie is saying, well, maybe we are making an error because we are afraid of spirituality, and so we don't dare to deal with it. And we should realize it's a key for the ecological conversion, and so we should be able to name it and explore it in an explicit way, and to listen to other voices that are not so afraid of spirituality. Because if we don't do so, it becomes a political problem. And instead of a good spirituality appearing and helping people, we may let space for other things that we don't need. And I will add, with the results of the European elections on Sunday, with 30–40% of the French people voting for the far-right parties, that is maybe what we are letting space for.
Yes, I would like to connect here and enter through this nomos door, or the nomos gate, with the law and economy. And as you all can understand, I'm in favor of spirituality. However, I wonder if the measurements of a juridical and economic kind are also very important. The background is I come from Sweden, where we are much in favor of tax, so income tax, consumption tax, wealth tax, and so. So would it be, my question is, does economic theological models exist trying to put like a price on certain things, like flight traveling, higher prices on meat in the restaurant, and etc., or perhaps reward for recycling? Couldn't that be like a motivation for humanity to make this transformation, the ecological conversion that we are talking about? So excuse me for being a bit heretical on this symposium, but I'm not sure that the spiritual path has enough strength and power to generate conversion. Whereas if the price for flight travel, that I'm responsible for myself, of course, or other similar things, that if the price for meat in the restaurant would be 3 times as high, or traveling to the other part of the world will be 10 times as high, people would abstain from it. So yeah.
I would say that certainly we need both, and certainly, I mean, France is not Sweden, but we like taxes also, more than other countries. So and for sure, commercial companies are changing because of regulations. That's obvious. Before joining the Jesuits, I've worked 2 years in a consultancy company on sustainable development. And the good part of the discourse of the industry was, don't make law. Your laws are always very bad. And so we will share good practices among us, and we will do the best job we can. The truth is, this doesn't work. I mean, it's cosmetics. And then comes the law, and everybody has to follow. So certainly we need that. But I will take also an example from the French context, saying that we need something deeper if we want people to accept regulations. Because at one point, people will get fed up with regulations. That was 7 years ago. Our government imposed a tax on oil for everybody. And so it was not taking into account the social reality I was speaking of between rich people and poor people. Everybody had to pay the same tax to fill up the gas tank. And it ended with what was called the Gilets jaunes movement, the yellow jacket movement. And it's been a very popular movement, quite spontaneous, not organized by any syndicate, any political party, because people were not willing to accept an unfair tax, an unfair regulation. And I would say that if people have to enter a certain simplicity of life, and for people in rich country like France, it means almost for everybody, even popular people, to accept a decrease in their purchase power, they will need a deeper motivation. If not, at one point, they will not accept. And they will say, I don't buy this thing. And even if it does, it becomes, it implies to say, let's make Europe a fortress and let the other part of the world do what they can. And for the poorest one, let them die, go to war, no matter what. I don't want to let my things. And so that's maybe where ethics, virtue, and spirituality come in, because you need something deeper to be able to accept this kind of regulation, I would say.
Thank you both for wonderful presentations and very inspiring. This is something to share and to ask you if you've heard of this documentary. At the moment, I know that it's only available in Australia, but we're trying to expand its viewing. It's called How to Poison the Planet. And it's about a chemical called PFOS that has been widely used for firefighting, but also for Teflon and Scotch Guard. And it's actually in 98% of the world population's bloodstreams. And it's causing illness and death widestream. It originated in America, and the documentary explains both an American situation and an Australian Indigenous people population, which connects to the spiritual path, because the Aboriginal people of the country, the area where this is most affected in Wreck Bay, north of Sydney, have lost their connection to their cultural lands because of the dangers of this chemical in the soil, in the water. So I thank you for the 6 or 7 parts, because the story, like in documentaries, but also connecting to the science, it makes a powerful message. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but at the moment it's on Stan. I don't know if you know what Stan is, but it's like a Netflix platform. Last week I had conversations in Rome trying to get a viewing of it through the Dicastery for promoting human development. If people were interested, I could possibly arrange for that kind of a viewing, but it's just one example. But this chemical cannot be eradicated once it's in the soil. It can't be remediated. It's here for good.
Muy interesantes las dos ponencias. Parto de una pregunta que yo mismo me he hecho. Mi formación fue de físico antes de entrar en la compañía. Y yo salí de la facultad de física desconectado. Es la experiencia con los pueblos indígenas, con el mundo chamánico, que he tenido un poquito de acercamiento, que comienzo a comprender las relaciones de otra forma. Ustedes tienen una experiencia de estudiantes que llegan de distintas facultades. Hay una propuesta, creo que algo le plantearon así a Teilhard de Chardin con un grupo de científicos que plantease una nueva matriz pedagógica que ayudase a que los estudiantes salgamos conectados, no desconectados. Bueno, ¿podrías desarrollar un poquito más a partir de la experiencia? ¿Cuál es el proceso de esos estudiantes que vienen de facultades que los desconectan y qué es lo que ustedes consiguen, qué input consiguen poner que les ayude a hacer un cambio? A mí fueron los chamanes, fueron las experiencias indígenas. ¿Cómo hacer esto en esta selva? ¿Cómo hacer esto en esta selva?
If I take the experience of the Campus de la Transition, it's interesting because that's what we are trying to do, connecting students, but in a context where we can't use classical spiritual tools, because if we do so, everybody will escape. So maybe there are two main ways. One is this mind, body, and heart pedagogy, and I will insist on the body part. In a way, because you give people an experience of going in the vegetable garden, of preparing a local meal. And this changes for students the way they can imagine studies. Studies is a classroom, is a professor, you listen, and then you fill up papers. And that's studies. That's only the brain. And so if they realize that at the same time that they learn at brain level, they learn with their body, then what we see is that it touches the heart. Of course, we don't want to control the heart. That's not good. We've learned it at a high price. But we can set a framework for touching the heart. And I think that the body part, the experience part, is a really interesting one. So that's the first one. And then the second way of doing it, very quickly when we started the Campus de la Transition, we invented, let's say, a common ritual called the Mot du Matin, the morning prayer, but it's not prayer, the morning ritual, let's say. And it was very simple. Everybody was invited. They were not obliged, but it was part of the way of life. People would join. And the morning ritual was each one will give in 2 or 3 words his inner weather forecast. How are you? Simple question. Difficult answer. And that may be, for example, the first way of helping people to reconnect is that most of the time, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. Dot. And then suddenly we were giving them a space to say, how are you? And they didn't know how to answer. So we invented cards with cloud, sun, rain, rainbow, storm. And it was a mediation for them to connect in the inner life and to say, well, the truth is that this morning I'm a bit stormy. Why? And they were developing a little bit. So that was the first part of the ritual. And then one of the group will offer a kind of connection exercise. So it could be to listen to a music, to a text, and then a collective exercise. And this could be to walk barefoot outside, dancing, or games. And I was very surprised because so this ritual for people coming for 3 days, it opens a little bit the door, but it's very weak. But we had people for 4 or 5 weeks. And for them, at the end of the experience, when we were asking them, so what's the main lesson of your 5 weeks? They will say, oh, here I had a spiritual experience. For me, from my Jesuit point of view, I was saying, well, where was the spiritual part? The thick one. And from my French lay context, I was saying, but we were not supposed to give you spirituality because this is dangerous and then you may escape, etc. But the truth is that they, by connecting with their inner life, with their feelings, one, and by some mornings go outside, watch the sun, listen to the birds, walk barefoot on the grass, they had what they were calling themselves a spiritual experience. So it's very simple, it's very humble. I must admit, I would say it's a bit weak when you know what spirituality can be when you are rooted in a religion, but that was an entrance door for them.
Muchas gracias. Lo vamos a dejar aquí, porque todavía nos falta un poco de información antes de ir a comer. Gracias, Noelí. Gracias, Javier, por vuestras ponencias.